The sound of the key scraping uselessly against the lock echoed in my ears as my heart sank into my stomach. I tried again, more carefully this time, thinking perhaps I had made a mistake. The key that had opened this door for 37 years now refused to turn. "Margaret, are you having trouble with the lock?" Mrs. Peterson called from her porch next door, watering can in hand, concern etched on her kind face. I think so," I replied, my voice sounding strange even to my own ears. "The key will not turn." I was exhausted after spending 3 days at my sister Claire's house in Millbrook. Claire had broken her hip, and I had gone to help her settle back home after her hospital stay. All I wanted was to collapse into my favorite armchair with a cup of tea. Instead, I stood helplessly on my own doorstep, locked out of the home my late husband James and I had purchased when we were barely in our 30s. As I tried the key once more, the door suddenly swung open. There stood Vanessa, my daughter-in-law of 5 years, her perfectly manicured hand resting on the doorknob, her crimson lips curled into what I can only describe as a triumphant smile. "Oh, Margaret," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "I meant to call you. We changed the locks yesterday." "Changed the locks?" I repeated, confused. "Why would you do that without telling me?" Vanessa's smile did not waver as she leaned against the doorframe, blocking my entry. My son Robert appeared behind her, his face pale, eyes not quite meeting mine. "Mom, we have been meaning to talk to you," he said, his voice unusually high. "Vanessa and I think it is time for some changes." Before I could respond, Vanessa's hand shot out, presenting me with a single new key. "This is for the back door only," she informed me coolly. "Your things have been moved to the guest room. We have converted your bedroom into my home office." I stood frozen, my overnight bag suddenly feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds in my trembling hand. "I do not understand," I whispered. "This is my home." That is when Vanessa's mask of politeness finally slipped. She leaned forward, her voice lowering to ensure Mrs. Peterson could not overhear. "This is my house now, old lady. The deed has been transferred to Robert and me. You should be grateful we are letting you stay at all." The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. Mrs. Peterson must have sensed something was wrong because she called out, "Everything okay over there, Margaret?" "Everything is fine," Vanessa answered for me, her smile instantly returning. "Margaret is just tired from her trip." Robert finally stepped forward, gently taking my elbow to guide me inside. "Come on, Mom, let us get you settled." As I entered my own home, or what was once my home, I barely recognized the space I had lovingly maintained for nearly 4 decades. The familiar family photos that had lined the entryway were gone, replaced by abstract art pieces I had never seen before. My antique side table had vanished, and the warm beige walls had been painted a stark white. "Where are my things?" I asked, my voice small. "We have been redecorating," Vanessa replied casually, as if she were discussing the weather. This place needed a modern update. It was so dated. I followed Robert to what had always been our guest bedroom. The room was now sparsely furnished with just a single bed, a small dresser, and a lamp. Gone was the beautiful quilted bedspread my mother had made. Gone were the watercolor paintings James and I had collected on our travels. In their place was a sterile, hotel-like space that held no trace of the life I had built. "Your clothes are in the dresser," Robert said, not meeting my eyes. "We donated the things that seemed outdated or that you have not worn recently." "You went through my belongings? You gave away my things without asking me?" My voice broke as the magnitude of what was happening began to sink in. "Mom, please do not make this difficult," Robert sighed. "Vanessa has put a lot of work into upgrading the house." "Upgrading?" I echoed, tears welling in my eyes. "Robert, this is my home. Your father and I bought this house before you were even born. How could you possibly think—" "Actually," Vanessa interrupted, leaning against the doorframe, "that is not accurate anymore. Maybe you should show her, Robert." My son reluctantly pulled a folded document from his pocket and handed it to me. It was a deed transfer, dated just 2 weeks ago. My hands shook as I read my own signature at the bottom, a signature I had no memory of providing. "I never signed this," I whispered, looking up at my son in disbelief. "You did, Mom," Robert insisted, though his eyes flickered away from mine. "Remember when we brought those insurance papers for you to sign? It was in that stack." The memory came back in fragments, Vanessa and Robert visiting me with a thick sheaf of papers, explaining that they were updating their insurance policies and needed me to sign as a witness. They had been so insistent, hovering as I signed page after page without reading the fine print. "You tricked me," I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. "You deliberately deceived me into signing away my home. We did what was necessary." Vanessa cut in sharply. "You are getting older, Margaret. You cannot maintain a house this size anymore. Robert and I have decided this is the best arrangement for everyone." "Best for whom?" I asked, my shock giving way to anger. "How dare you make decisions about my life, my home, without even consulting me?" "Mom, please calm down," Robert pleaded, glancing nervously at Vanessa. "Your blood pressure." "Do not talk to me about my blood pressure," I snapped, surprising even myself with the force of my words. "I am 72, not incapacitated. I have been managing this house and my affairs perfectly well since your father died 8 years ago." Vanessa rolled her eyes. "The gutters have not been cleaned in years. The back deck is practically rotting, and let us not even discuss how outdated the kitchen is." "So your solution is to steal my home from me?" I demanded, my voice rising. "To trick me into signing away everything I have worked for?" "We are not stealing anything," Vanessa replied coldly. "We are ensuring this property stays in the family and is properly maintained, and we are generously allowing you to continue living here." "Generously?" I repeated, incredulous. "In my own home? In the guest room?" Robert stepped between us, clearly uncomfortable with the confrontation. "Mom, please, we can discuss this more tomorrow when everyone has had some rest." I looked at my son, my only child, and hardly recognized him. When had he become this weak, manipulable man who would betray his own mother? Had Vanessa's influence been so complete that he had lost all sense of right and wrong? "I need some air," I said finally, pushing past them and heading for the door. "Do not forget your new key," Vanessa called after me, her voice mockingly sweet. "Remember, back door only." I grabbed the key from her outstretched hand and left without another word, tears blurring my vision as I walked aimlessly down the street I had called home for nearly 4 decades. I found myself at Millicent Park, sitting on the same bench where James and I used to feed the ducks every Sunday morning. The familiar setting brought both comfort and pain, another piece of my life now tainted by betrayal. I pulled out my phone with trembling hands and called the one person I knew would understand. "Claire, it is Margaret," I said when my sister answered. "Something terrible has happened." I poured out the whole story, my voice breaking several times as I described the locked door, the transformed house, and the deed with my signature I never knowingly provided. "That is fraud," Claire exclaimed, outrage clear in her voice despite her own physical pain. "You need to talk to a lawyer immediately, Margaret." "A lawyer?" I repeated uncertainly. "Against my own son?" "Your son who helped steal your house?" Claire retorted. "Yes, absolutely. This is not just wrong, it is illegal. They tricked you into signing legal documents under false pretenses." The thought of taking legal action against Robert was heartbreaking, but what choice did I have? I could not simply accept being relegated to a guest in my own home, watching as Vanessa systematically erased every trace of the life James and I had built together. "I know a good attorney," Claire continued. "Frank Daniels. He specializes in elder law. I will text you his number." After hanging up with Claire, I sat on the bench for a long time, watching families stroll through the park, young parents with children, elderly couples walking hand in hand. The normal, everyday scenes of life that suddenly seemed so far removed from my own reality. With a deep breath, I dialed the number Claire had sent me. "Mr. Daniels, my name is Margaret Reynolds. My sister Claire suggested I call you. I believe my son and daughter-in-law have fraudulently transferred the deed to my home into their names." The following morning, I returned to the house no longer mine, according to the deed, to collect more of my personal belongings. I used the key Vanessa had given me to enter through the back door, feeling like an intruder in the space where I had raised my family. As I passed the kitchen, I heard Vanessa on the phone, her voice animated with excitement. "The contractor says they can start next week," she was saying. "I know. I have been waiting to renovate this outdated kitchen since Robert and I got married." We are knocking down the wall between the kitchen and dining room to create an open concept space. I froze, my heart clenching. The wall she so casually planned to demolish contained the height markings where I had measured Robert's growth every birthday from age 2 until he left for college. James had carefully penciled each line, writing the date and age alongside. It was one of my most treasured memories in physical form. "Oh, and you have to come see the master bedroom," Vanessa continued, unaware of my presence. "We have completely transformed it. You would not believe it is the same room where that old lady slept for decades." That old lady. Is that all I was to her now? A nameless, faceless obstacle to her decorating ambitions? I must have made some sound, because Vanessa suddenly turned. Seeing me, she quickly ended her call. "Margaret," she said coolly, "I did not hear you come in." "Clearly," I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. "I came to get some of my things." "Fine, but please do not take too long. I have the interior designer coming at 11. I bit back a retort and headed to the guest room where my belongings had been unceremoniously relocated. Opening the dresser, I discovered that more than half of my clothes were indeed missing, including several items that had sentimental value, like the cashmere sweater James had given me on our last Christmas together. On the small bedside table sat a single framed photo Robert's high school graduation. It was the only personal item that had survived Vanessa's purge. I picked it up, running my finger over my son's young face, wondering where that smiling boy had gone. As I gathered what remained of my possessions, I heard Robert return home. He and Vanessa spoke in hushed tones in the hallway, their voices occasionally rising enough for me to catch fragments. "She called a lawyer," Vanessa hissed. "Your mother is actually threatening to sue us." "What did you expect?" Robert responded, sounding stressed. "We changed the locks while she was away and moved her things without asking." "We have been planning this for months," Vanessa snapped. "You agreed it was the best solution. The house is worth over $600,000 now with the neighborhood development. We need this equity for our future." Their future, built on stealing from my past. I stepped into the hallway, causing them both to fall silent. "I am leaving now," I said quietly. "I have taken some clothes and personal items." Robert had the grace to look ashamed. "Mom, where are you staying? You know you are welcome to stay here." "In the guest room of my own home?" I asked pointedly. "No, thank you. I am staying with Eleanor from my book club until I sort things out." "Sort things out?" Vanessa repeated, her eyes narrowing. "What exactly does that mean?" "It means I have spoken with an attorney," I replied calmly. "He believes we have a strong case for fraud and elder abuse." "Elder abuse?" Vanessa scoffed. "Do not be ridiculous. We are providing you with a place to live." "After stealing my home through deception," I countered, "Mr. Daniels was quite interested in how you presented the deed transfer as insurance documents." Robert paled. "Mom, please, we do not need to involve lawyers. We can work this out as a family." "We stopped being a family the moment you conspired against me," I said, the words painful but necessary. "I raised you better than this, Robert." As I headed for the door, Vanessa called after me, her voice sharp with panic. "You will regret this, Margaret. You are making a big mistake." I turned to face them one last time. No, the mistake was trusting that my own son would honor and protect me in my later years, not conspire to take what is rightfully mine. That is a mistake I will not make again. The next 3 months were among the most difficult of my life. After 2 weeks with Eleanor, I moved into a small apartment that Mr. Daniels helped me find. It was clean and safe, but it was not home. The legal process was exhausting, both emotionally and physically. Mr. Daniels filed an emergency petition to freeze any changes to the property while our case proceeded. Thankfully, this halted Vanessa's renovation plans before she could destroy the growth measurements on the kitchen wall. Robert and Vanessa hired their own attorney, a sharp-suited young man who argued that I had willingly signed the deed transfer and was now experiencing donor's remorse. They claimed I had verbally promised to give them the house and had known exactly what I was signing. It was my word against theirs, and for a while, I feared the court would believe my son over his confused elderly mother. But then came an unexpected turning point. Mrs. Peterson, my neighbor of 30 years, contacted me after hearing about the legal proceedings from another neighbor. She was outraged by what had happened and offered to testify on my behalf. I overheard them planning this months ago, she revealed when we met for coffee. I was gardening near your kitchen window last spring when I heard Vanessa telling Robert they needed to get the house before property values rose any further. She said they could ease you out once the deed was transferred. Mrs. Peterson was not the only one who came forward. My banker, Mr. Thompson, provided records showing that I had consistently maintained the property, paying for a new roof just 2 years prior and regular maintenance on all major systems. This directly contradicted Vanessa's claims that I was unable to properly care for the house. Most damning of all was the testimony of Vanessa's friend Stephanie, who had a falling out with her shortly after the deed transfer. Stephanie reluctantly admitted that Vanessa had boasted about pulling one over on the old lady and had detailed exactly how they had slipped the deed transfer into the stack of insurance documents. Through all of this, Robert remained largely silent, letting Vanessa and their attorney do most of the talking. He could not meet my eyes during the court proceedings, and each time I saw him, he looked more haggard and uncomfortable. Finally, after 12 grueling weeks, the judge issued her ruling. The court finds clear and convincing evidence that the deed transfer was obtained through fraudulent means, she declared. The document is hereby nullified, and the property is returned to the sole ownership of Margaret Reynolds. Relief washed over me as the judge continued. Furthermore, the defendants are ordered to reimburse the plaintiff for all legal fees and emotional damages in the amount of $45,000. Vanessa gasped audibly, her face contorting with anger. Robert simply stared at the floor, shoulders slumped in defeat. As we left the courtroom, Mr. Daniels smiled warmly. "Congratulations, Margaret, you can go home now." Home. The word had never sounded so sweet or so complicated. The locks had been changed again by the time I returned to the house, this time with a court order and a locksmith. The place was in disarray, with half-packed boxes scattered throughout. Vanessa and Robert had been given 2 weeks to vacate the property. I walked through each room slowly, cataloging the changes they had made in my absence. Some of my furniture had been placed in storage, which I would need to retrieve. Other pieces had been sold or discarded entirely. Family photos had been taken down, walls repainted, curtains replaced. In the kitchen, I went straight to the wall that marked Robert's growth, the wall Vanessa had planned to demolish. Running my fingers over the pencil marks, I felt tears well up. These simple lines traced my son's journey from a toddler to a young man. How could he have been willing to destroy them? A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Opening it, I found Robert standing alone on the porch, looking more like a chastened boy than the 40-year-old man he was. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. I hesitated before stepping aside to let him enter. We stood awkwardly in the entryway, surrounded by the evidence of his betrayal. "Mom, he began, then faltered. "I do not know what to say except that I am sorry, so incredibly sorry." "Why, Robert?" I asked, the question that had tormented me for months. "Why would you do this to me?" He sank onto the stairs, head in his hands. "It started small. Vanessa kept talking about how perfect this house would be if we owned it, how we could renovate it, how much equity we would have. Then it became all she talked about. So you decided to steal it from me," I pressed. "I told myself we were not stealing," he admitted, his voice hollow. "I convinced myself we were helping you, that you would not have to worry about maintenance or property taxes, that you would be happier with less responsibility. Did you ever consider asking me what would make me happy?" He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. "Vanessa said you would never agree, that you were too stubborn, too set in your ways. She said sometimes parents need their children to make difficult decisions for them." "I am your mother, not your child," I said firmly. "I have never been incapable of making my own decisions." "I know that now," he whispered. "Watching you in court, seeing how clearly you fought for yourself, I realized how wrong we had been, how wrong I had been." We sat in silence for a moment before he spoke again. "Vanessa and I are separating," he said finally. "After the court ruling, things fell apart. She blames me for not fighting harder, for not convincing you to drop the case. But watching her rage about losing our house, I finally saw what everyone else has probably seen all along. Part of me wanted to comfort him, to tell him he would find someone better, but another part, the part still raw from his betrayal, held back. "Where will you go?" I asked instead. "I have rented an apartment across town," he replied. "I start therapy next week. I need to understand how I could have done something so terrible to my own mother." He looked up at me, his expression earnest. "I do not expect forgiveness, Mom. I just want you to know how deeply I regret what I did. And I hope that someday, maybe, we can find a way to rebuild some kind of relationship." I studied my son's face, seeing both the boy I had raised and the man who had betrayed me. The road to forgiveness would be long and uncertain. "I do not know what our future looks like, Robert," I said honestly. "What you and Vanessa did caused damage that cannot be easily repaired. But you are my son, and I have loved you since before you drew your first breath. That has not changed, even when everything else has." He nodded, understanding this was neither forgiveness nor rejection, just the truth of where we stood. After he left, I walked through the house again, this time with new eyes. This was still my home, but it felt different now. Tainted by betrayal, yes, but also somehow more precious for having been nearly lost. In the coming weeks, I would reclaim this space. I would repaint the walls in colors of my choosing. I would replace what had been taken and rearrange what remained. I would invite friends over for dinner and laughter to drive out the echoes of conflict. And most importantly, I would install new locks with keys that belonged solely to me. 6 months later, as I settled into my restored home, I received a letter from Robert. Inside was a formal legal document and a handwritten note. The document was a quitclaim deed, in which Robert formally and irrevocably renounced any future claim to my property. Attached was an amendment to my homeowner's insurance that provided coverage against fraud and title theft. His note read, "Mom, I have been doing a lot of thinking in therapy about why I allowed myself to be persuaded to betray you. I realized I have spent my life taking the path of least resistance, especially with the strong-willed women in my life, first you, then Vanessa. The difference is that your strong will was always directed at protecting me, while hers was focused on getting what she wanted, regardless of who it hurt. I am learning to find my own voice and stand by my own principles. The enclosed documents are part of that process, my way of ensuring that what happened can never happen again, even if I someday weaken. I miss you every day. I miss Sunday dinners and your lemon meringue pie. I miss your wisdom and your laugh. I know I have not earned the right to ask for these things back in my life, but I hope that someday you might consider having coffee with me. Just coffee, just to talk. With deepest regret and enduring love, Robert." I sat on my porch, swing the same one where James and I had spent countless summer evenings, and considered my son's words. The betrayal still hurt, but time and the security of being back in my own home had softened its sharp edges. Perhaps one coffee would not hurt. Perhaps it could be the first small step on a very long journey back to trust. I took out my phone and typed a simple message. "Thursday, 2 p.m., the cafe on Maple Street. Just coffee, just to talk." As I pressed send, I looked around at my home, truly mine again, and felt a sense of peace I had not experienced in months. Whatever happened with Robert, whatever the future held, I had fought for what was mine and won. I had discovered a strength I had not known I possessed. And most importantly, I had learned that it is never too late to stand up for yourself, even when those you love are the ones trying to push you down. If you liked my story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I am looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There is so much more on my channel. Do not forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.